My son George has always had unusual friends. I don't know why. Some kids just attract certain types of people, and from a very early age, George seemed to draw in children who were considered estranged, the quiet ones, the ones parents whispered about, the ones teachers watched a little more closely. I have dozens of stories I could tell you, but there is one that has stayed lodged in my mind like a splinter, sharp, painful, and impossible to forget. George was in the 4th grade when it happened. My husband had just been reassigned for work, which meant our family had to move to a completely new town. New house, new school, new routines. George handled it better than I expected. He was always outgoing, always friendly, the kind of kid who could strike up a conversation with anyone. Because of that, my husband and I weren't particularly worried about him making new friends. The transition went smoothly, at least at first. Within the first few months, George seemed settled. His teachers spoke highly of him, and during the first school social event, I met his classmates' parents. They all seemed normal, responsible, trustworthy. I remember driving home that night feeling relieved, thinking maybe this move would actually be good for us. That illusion shattered one afternoon when I received a call from the school. It was the middle of the day, and the secretary asked if one of George's parents could come in immediately to discuss an incident involving George and another student. My husband was unavailable, so I went. On the drive to the school, my emotions were tangled. Because I assumed George had gotten into a fight. Confusion because physical altercations were completely out of character for him. George was gentle, sensitive. He hated conflict. When I picked him up and walked him toward the principal's office, he refused to answer any of my questions. That alone unsettled me. George was usually an oversharer. He narrated his thoughts, his feelings, his day, sometimes to the point of exhaustion. But now he walked beside me in complete silence, eyes glued to the floor. I assumed he was scared or embarrassed. The principal asked George to wait outside the office. Once the door closed behind him, the principal began asking the usual questions. How does George behave at home? Does he listen? Does he show aggression? I answered honestly. George was well-behaved, respectful, and kind. That wasn't maternal bias. It was simply the truth. Eventually, the principal explained the situation. Apparently, during recess, George had been involved in a physical altercation with another boy named Sebastian. According to the report, the two boys had been the last ones outside, walking up the stairs together. Out of nowhere, George allegedly pulled an eraser from his pocket and struck Sebastian on the head, causing him to fall and scream. I was stunned. It made no sense. I had heard of Sebastian before. George spoke about him fondly. They were friends, or at least I thought they were. I asked for more details, but the principal admitted no teacher had actually witnessed the incident. Both boys had told the same story independently. The principal assured me George wasn't in serious trouble. Kids fought sometimes. He just wanted me informed. I was relieved, but uneasy. George stayed silent the entire drive home. It wasn't until bedtime, when frustration finally got the better of me, that he spoke. He told me Sebastian had tricked him. According to George, they had been playing a game of make-believe, something Sebastian had suggested, pretending they were characters in Street Fighter. Sebastian told George to perform a co-move. George pulled an eraser from his pocket and lightly tapped Sebastian's head. That's when Sebastian dropped to the ground and began screaming. Then, according to George, Sebastian leaned in close and whispered something chilling into his ear. You don't say you attacked me, I'll seriously hurt you. Terrified, George did exactly what he was told. I was furious. My son had been manipulated, threatened, and falsely accused. I considered going straight to the school, but instead I decided to handle it personally. That evening, I searched the school directory and found Sebastian's mother's phone number. Her name was Maggie. She answered warmly, friendly, almost disarmingly so. She told me she already knew about the incident and that Sebastian had admitted what really happened. She said she had reprimanded him. That surprised me. As we talked, Maggie mentioned Sebastian had minor behavioral issues. Sometimes he acted like another person entirely, she said. Doctors believed he would grow out of it. I started to feel sympathy for her. She suggested a sleepover so the boys could move past the incident and strengthen their friendship. She even offered to host. Against my better judgment, I agreed. That weekend, I dropped George off at Maggie's house, Vivey house. She invited me in. We shared wine while the boys played in the basement. Maggie seemed normal, kind, concerned, genuine. At one point, I asked about Sebastian's behavior. Her demeanor changed instantly. She lowered her voice and told me Sebastian struggled socially. He'd seen several doctors. He was improving. Becoming more social was a good sign. I asked if George would be safe. She promised me he would. That night, I kissed my son goodbye and left. The next morning, George came out smiling. I assumed everything had gone well. It wasn't until we were driving away that he began to cry. He told me everything changed after they went to bed. Sometime during the night, George woke up to whispering. It came from the bathroom. The door was slightly open, and a strange flickering light spilled into the basement. Not an electric light. Candlelight. Sebastian was standing in front of the mirror, talking, but he wasn't calling himself Sebastian. He called himself a Mr. Jim. He wasn't on the phone. He wasn't talking to anyone. He was talking to anyone. He was talking to his reflection. The candle went out. The room went dark. Then George heard the bathroom door open. Whispering returned, this time directly above him. Words he didn't recognize. Not English. Something else. Eventually, Sebastian went back to bed like nothing had happened. I called Maggie immediately. At first, she laughed it off, but when I pressed her, she admitted the truth. Sebastian's issues were far more serious. One psychiatrist had suggested multiple personality disorder. They had already moved twice due to expulsions. She begged me not to contact the school. I agreed, then immediately regretted it. That Monday, Sebastian attacked another student. He was expelled. Maggie disappeared. The phone was disconnected. The house was empty. They vanished without a trace. That wasn't the first time I'd been close to something unexplainable. I grew up in a deeply religious household. Southern Baptist. We didn't believe in ghosts, but we absolutely believed in demons. My mother, however, was different. She struggled with addiction, mental illness. Some days she was functional. Other days she wasn't. Once I dreamed she attacked me in my bedroom. Then it happened for real. Another time, I found her holding a massive snake, despite a lifelong phobia. Then came the church lock-in. At 4:30 a.m., someone knocked. It was my mother, barefoot, sweating, smiling. She had no memory of it the next morning. And then there was my eldest son. He started sleepwalking at 8 years old. Most nights, I'd find him standing outside my bedroom, eyes open, empty, staring through me. Until one night, I heard tapping. Soft, rhythmic. I stepped into the hallway. He was standing there, pressing his forehead against the wall. Knock, 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 like he was trying to get through to something on the other side.